This is draft season. John Schmeelk, Tony Pauline with you. It's all brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at moodys.com. Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda. Tony, we are just over 3 weeks until draft night. It has come particularly fast this year. We're going to do our top 10 offensive rankings this week. Before we get there, though, anything you want to hit on in terms of pro days or news or anything like that?
So pro days are basically over. Thank you, Lord, because March just drags for me because I'm sitting by the phone. I think the big news, and I had known this for a couple of weeks, but I waited till it happened. The big news last week is that Tyler Warren did nothing at pro day. And Tyler Warren did nothing at the combine either. No testing, no position drills. Didn't do any of that at Penn State. I was privy to that information as I wrote at Sportskeeda a couple of weeks before it happened, and basically, what their plan was, what Tyler Warren's team plan was, is there are 4 or 5 teams which are very interested in Tyler Warren, and they're just going to, for lack of a better word, market Tyler Warren to those teams. No testing, no position drills. I wasn't told whether or not he's going to run 40s when those teams come in to work him out. Those teams were the Jets. Those teams were the Colts. Those teams were the Bears, and one team was the Rams. I'm also told the Saints and the Chargers also like him. We'll get into that where he goes as far when we get to the position, the tight end position. But it's interesting, fewer and fewer players working out, and then a guy like Tyler Warren who doesn't do anything at the combine or at pro day. So there's really no marks on him.
And Tony, a lot of people have him as their top tight end. I'm not going to argue with that. I think that's fine. Him and Colson Loveland are very close for me. We'll talk about the tight ends later on today. But both of us did worry about his burst, his twitchiness, and that part on his tape. Right. And historically, Penn State players with their strength and conditioning program tend to test extremely well with that program. So maybe red flag might be too strong, but maybe like a yellow flag gets put up the flagpole a little bit that, all right, well, if he's not testing, that means the testing's probably not very good.
Well, I would say it's a red flag. I mean, if you remember the COVID year when there was no 2021, when there was no combine, and that Penn State Pro Day where all these 240-pound guys were running in the 4.3s, the high 4.3s. And let's also not forget Michael Mayer. Remember the tight end from Notre Dame who no one thought was going to run under 4.8. He goes to the combine, he runs a 4.7. He ran at the combine because he knew he was going to dispel those myths that he was a slow tight end. So if you've got the speed and you are running faster than is expected, you're going to get your rear end out there and run the 40 for scouts.
Right.
So what you said is right on. In my opinion, it's more of a red flag than it is a yellow flag.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get into our top 10s here, Tony. Let's talk about quarterbacks. Cam Ward, both of us have him at number 1. Why don't you go through the rest of your top 10, and then I'll throw some names in there myself in terms of where I have them ranked, and then we'll kind of debate back and forth.
Cam Ward, number 1. Shedeur Sanders, number 2. I have Jackson Dart, number 3. I've got Quinn Ewers, number 4. A lot of people are going to disagree with that. Quinn Ewers has done a lot of winning on the college level. He's always come through. There are some areas of his game he needs to improve, but I'm sticking with him as number 4. Jalen Milroe, number 5. Physically the most gifted player in this draft, but someone whose game has been on the downhill since the second half of last season. Tyler Shuck of Louisville, number 6. Riley Leonard of Notre Dame, number 7. Then it fills out with Colin McCord of Syracuse, who has a 4th-round pick. And 9 and 10, 2 5th-rounders, Will Howard of Ohio State, Brady Cook of Missouri.
All right, so I'm with you. I have Cam Ward at 1. Now, you're probably going to laugh at me, Tony, because I told you I was part of the Tyler Shuck crew. I do not have a first-round grade on Shedeur Sanders myself. I have kind of a top of the second. Now, that will get him pushed up into the first round because that's what happens with quarterbacks. Most second-round graded quarterbacks go in the first round anyway. But I do have – I'm a guy that shoots for upside with QBs, and I think the physical tools, and I know the injuries and the age, I will roll my dice on Tyler Shuck. I have him and Sanders tags basically touching in round 2. I have Jackson Dart as my 4th quarterback. I have kind of like a second, third round, and the second round grade on him. I'm with you. Quinn Ewers, I have him at 5. I was impressed with the tape, to be honest with you, Tony. I think I like his approach to the game where he plays very loose. He has a loose arm. It's not like an A-plus arm, but it's a better than average arm in my opinion. He puts the ball into some tight areas. I'd rather coach that out of a guy than to coach it into a guy. You know what I mean? I just like his approach. I think he's just inconsistent from week to week. Like he can't pull some of the throws off he tries to pull off some of the time. But I have yours is 5 with the third round grade. I have Jalen Milroe after him as just a pure developmental guy. Like if you're just grading on his play, he's probably a fourth round pick. But obviously you're grading him on his potential, so he's going to get pushed up higher than that. I think Will Howard is a safe round 4 type of pick. Kyle McCord, same deal, round 4. That's where I got. I would probably have Riley Leonard and Brady Cook coming up next on that list. I was wondering, you didn't have Dylan Gabriel on your list, and there are fans of his around the league. Would he be next up for you in your group, or is he even a little bit further down the board for you?
No, I believe he is actually. He's a little bit further down because of what we saw at the Senior Bowl and the Combine. After him, I got the kid from Canada, Elglismar Taylor, who's got a big arm. I like Curtis Rourke. And Maxwell Brosmer of Minnesota is a guy that's got a better arm. I think with Dylan Gabriel, I love him from the shoulders up. It's just from the physical tools down that I think he's going to be a real good backup on Sunday who could maybe be a spot starter.
All right, so let's have the debate here because I think everyone knows Cam Ward's going to be the first quarterback taken, right? From what you're hearing right now, do you think Shedeur Sanders is in the mix top 5 still? Do you think he's going to end up slipping a little bit? What are you hearing around the league about generally what teams are thinking about Shedeur?
I'll go back to the Combine. I wrote a story at Sportskeeda that said Shedeur Sanders was in fact slipping. And there were some people who agree with you. When I say people, I mean teams in the NFL who say they wouldn't take Shedeur Sanders in the first round. Now, people will say, well, the negatives and people will complain, it's not fair because they don't like his attitude or character or arrogance, but it goes deeper with that than Shedeur Sanders. As we've said here on the show multiple times, the 2024 film is not much better, in fact, than 2023. In fact, it's even worse in some areas. He's not a big guy. He doesn't have a big arm. Fundamentally, we've talked about it time and time again on the show. He's a horror, fundamentally. Throwing off his back foot, not releasing the ball with improper footwork, slow moving his head off the primary target, puts the ball up for grabs, doesn't have a huge arm. I mean, the fact that it's Shedeur Sanders, coached by Deion Sanders, I think kind of elevates him in the outside the scouting community. And someone brought this up to me. They said, you know what? Here's a guy who's always been coached by his dad. What's going to happen when he has to take coaching from someone else? That's also something, I don't want to say it's a red flag, but it's something to be concerned about. So I still have him as my number 2 quarterback. I've had him in mock drafts since the Combine going to the New Orleans Saints. But there are some people who agree with you. They would take Tyler Shough over Shedeur Sanders. And if Sanders is not a second-round pick, he's a late first-round pick. Absolutely falling. We'll see how far he falls.
And look, just to be clear, Tony has a first-round grade on him. I don't want people screaming and replying to this podcast that Tony hates Shedeur Sanders. He does not.
No.
He has a first-round grade on him. And look, he's a tough player. He's accurate. He throws a pretty good anticipation. I'm with you. I think some of the stuff Tony throwing off the back foot stuff, if he had a little bit of a stronger arm, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But the problem is that he doesn't have that Jordan Love cannon where he can get off platform, do those type of things, and still make plays while maybe not doing everything in that perfect fundamental way. And look, he's not helped by the offensive line either, right? He's constantly running and moving and retreating. So that stuff might very well get better if he's put into a better environment.
But you mentioned a word there that's also a red flag, retreating, because when he is pressured, he's running backwards oftentimes, a la Zach Wilson, if you remember that. You can't do that. And as far as, Tony Pauline not liking Shedeur Sanders, the reason I don't like him is he was my number 1 quarterback coming into the season. He was far and away my number 1 prospect. People were talking about Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers as top 10 picks. I said, there's no way those guys are going to be top 10 picks. But when I really watched the film, I didn't see much progress, if any progress, in his game from last season. In fact, I saw regression in some areas. And I put a premium on guys who are playing their best football, especially at the quarterback position, when they enter the draft, a la Jaden Daniels, a la Bo Nix, a la Cam Ward, who was a much better quarterback in 2024 than he was in 2023. Just one thing on Tyler Shough. Here's my hurdle, my mental block with Tyler Shough. He was outstanding as a redshirt freshman at Oregon. He was outstanding last year at Louisville. But I just can't throw away the 4 years in between when he
I
was at
get it.
Texas Tech with the inconsistency and the injury. That is what concerns me about Tyler Shough. That's why I don't have him. I haven't bought into this Tyler Shough love because I remember the prior 4 years before he played at Louisville last year, wanting to see this guy take his game next level, wanting to see this guy basically revert to back to where he was as a redshirt freshman at Oregon and really take off. And I didn't see it. That's a concern to me.
No, and I think that's absolutely fair. The body of work, there are holes there. There are concerns there. The injury, not being able to dominate at Texas Tech, I'm with you on all. I think that's fair. The age thing at quarterback doesn't bother me. You're still getting 10 years out of the guy. You're going to be fine with that. But I think the other stuff is fair. All right, then you get to the kind of Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe area. I think that's kind of, for me, the next kind of tier of quarterbacks, Tony. And it's just Jackson Dart, it's hard because it's such a collegiate offense. Like, he's not doing NFL things. Like, his arm's good enough. He's good enough mobility wise, but there's just not a lot of NFL stuff on the tape. Jalen Milroe, again, just so raw throwing the football, but he's a great athlete. And then Quinn Ewers already kind of talked about. So I would not be surprised if all of those guys are off in the second round. I think Ewers may be in the third, but I think they'll all be. We're gonna have more day two picks this year at quarterback, Tony, than we've had in like decades.
And why not? I mean, if you are the Cleveland Browns, if you are the New York Jets, if you're the New York Giants, are you taking Shedeur Sanders in the top 8 picks? Or are you going to take the best player available who you can put on the field in 2025? He's going to help you, and then take a quarterback in day 2 that you can develop, knowing that you're honest with yourself, Shedeur Sanders also needs a lot of development in his game. Shedeur Sanders really isn't going to help you, or does it look like he's going to be able to help you as a rookie in 2025? And all those guys you mentioned, I got Tyler Shough in there. I agree with you about Jackson Dart. Quinn Ewers, I think the deep pass, I talked to people who were at the Texas Pro Day. They said it's more fundamentals and it's more footwork than it is arm strength. I mean, even the Riley Leonards, the Kyle McCords, the Will Howards. These guys have the physical skills. These guys have the arm strength to play on Sunday. They just need a lot of coaching. They need some work from the ground up. They need a mentor, as does Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, I like the way the ball came off of Ewers' hands at the combine. I thought it came off his hand really well. I thought him and Shough throwing those deep outs. I thought both of them looked pretty good throwing those deep outs. But I'm with you. On tape, the deep ball at Texas is something that I think he definitely needs to get ironed out a little bit. All right, of that last group that you talked about, Leonard, McCord, Howard, Cook, who are the guy do one of those guys you think have a chance, Tony, to develop into a starter, or are you just looking at, good backups with that kind of group there?
I would say Riley Leonard, because I think he improved as a passer as the year went on at Notre Dame. I think that, Notre Dame didn't have any star receivers. They had an okay offensive line. He carried that team with his arm and with his legs, as opposed to, say, Jalen Milroe, who anybody who watches the show knows that I liked a lot, basically did it all with his legs because he lost confidence in his passing ability. So I do think that Riley Leonard can. My issues with Kyle McCord and Will Howard, they have next level physical abilities. They're very slow moving their head off the primary target. They tend to stare down the receiver, give away passes. That could be a killer on Sunday.
And I defended Tony. I'll defend myself here too, so I don't get all the people yelling at me about Shedeur Sanders in the mentions on YouTube and Twitter and stuff like that. Guys, I think he's going to be a good, solid starting NFL quarterback. I just don't see the elite physical tools, which I think you, in a lot of ways, need now to be an elite quarterback in the National Football League. People talk about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's got a really good arm, and he moves a lot better than people give him credit for too. So, and he's bigger than Shedeur is as well. So
significantly.
So for me, I think, you get him in front of a board and these coaches get him in these private meetings. He might be off the charts, approaching the game mentally, seeing things smart, knowing the game. I obviously don't have the opportunity to do that. So they probably will have him graded higher than I would just watching him on tape. And again, I think the offensive line is prohibitive in terms of watching him do some of the stuff. It forced him to throw a lot of screens in offense. It's really simplified things. But I think he has a chance to be a good starting NFL quarterback. But I'm one that wants to shoot for guys I think have the raw tools to be a top 10 quarterback. So that's why I kind of address that as I do. All right. Let's go to running back here, Tony. Stat class. My God, I keep going down my
Yeah.
list. I'm like, oh, another second round guy, another second round guy, another third round guy, another third round guy, another third round guy. You have the same thing. You went, let's see,
Yep.
12 guys deep here, and you're still within third round picks. So why don't you give your top group here, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah, Ashton Genty, I believe, is far and away head and shoulders the best running back in this draft, going to be a top 15 pick. Then I have Omarion Hampton of North Carolina. I still like Caleb Johnson a lot from Iowa. Didn't run well at the 40, but he plays fast. Quinshawn
By
Junkins,
the way, Tony,
because
you said it, by the way, on Caleb Johnson. I'm sorry for interrupting you. On tape, no one catches hit that dude from behind. Like,
yeah,
he gets out there, no one catches him. So I'm with you. I think he runs faster than his time.
great bursting, can run the daylight. Quinshawn Junkins, what I saw during the college football playoffs is really what I expected to see throughout the season. That violence, that ability to basically be a one-man show is what I like. Trayvon Henderson of Ohio State. I love Henderson. I've mentioned him several times throughout the season on the show. I think that Junkins is going to be drafted before Henderson, but Henderson does so many different things so well, he could turn out to be the better pro. Trevor Etienne of Georgia, who I believe could be one of the most underrated backs in this draft. When you get him hitting on all cylinders, he is tough to stop. Damian Martinez, who was rated highly coming into the season, but was in a rotational system at Miami because they had so many good running backs, which can make him great value. Cam Scatterbo of Arizona State. I know everybody is flavor of the month. Everybody loves him. What he does exceptionally well, but he's a bit limited as far as his ability to run the outside. Dylan Sampson, outstanding pass catcher, really fast, just needs to develop his ball carrying skills. Byashel Tutin of Virginia Tech, who I believe is one of the most underrated backs in the draft. Late day two, early day three, fast, explosive, will pick and choose his spots on the inside, has the speed and agility to turn the perimeter. Also a terrific pass catcher out of the backfield. Really, we talk about how it's a deep group of running backs, but the thing about all these running backs, the guys I mentioned, and even later on, you get a variety of everything. Okay, Ashton Genty does everything well. Can run on the inside, turn the corner, be a good pass catcher. But then you got the Hamptons, the Johnsons, the Junkins, who are your bigger feature backs. They're going to pound it out on the inside, and they play fast. And then you got the Trayvon Hendersons and the Trevor Etiennes, who are more of your scat back, creative ball carriers that you can use on the outside if they ever bring back the toss sweep. That you can use those guys on the toss sweep to get them around the perimeter. They're great open field runners. So it's not only a deep class, but there's a lot of versatility within the class.
No, I'm with you. All right, I'll go through my list here, Tony. And the top is very similar. It's a little boring. I'm going to apologize. Genty's my first guy. I have him a full tier above Omarion Hampton. I know there's some news that Hampton could get picked before Genty, and they're right next to each other. To me, there is a clear tier between those two guys. I have Omarion Hampton second. I have him as kind of like a hybrid first, second round grade on him. I have Caleb Johnson third. Right behind him, literally, their tags are touching. I have Quinshawn Junkins. I was really impressed by his combine testing because you watch him, you don't necessarily see some of the explosiveness on tape. But to your point, you saw later in the year. But that kind of moved him up ahead of Trayvon Henderson for me. I have Cam Scatterbo next, and that's just going off the tape. I know some people have some concerns with things with him that are not tape related. Trayvon Henderson is my next guy. Injuries worry me for him, Tony, because he went 2 years at Ohio State and couldn't stay on the field. But man, he was good this year. I went through that tape again. And I moved him up. He was better than I thought, higher than I thought he was going to be. I have Dylan Sampson next, and I did not think I was going to like him. I watch his tape. All he does is run away from people on tape.
Yeah.
Like short areas, he gets from 0 to 30 like really quickly. He just accelerates extremely well and makes people miss. He's only 200 pounds, but he's only 5'9". So I think that kind of gives you some leeway there, similar to Travis Etienne, who's only 198 pounds, but he's 5'8", right? So those guys are only 5'8", but they're 200, so I think they're big enough to run. I got Devin Neal next in the third round. I just think he's so solid all around. He reminds me of the kid that came out of Kentucky last year that went to Buffalo.
Right. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you know who I mean. Who had a really nice rookie year from. I think he reminds me of him a little bit. I got Bayshell two next to Tony. He has a good long speed. I think his vision at the line could use a little bit of work still. He's a little slow to the hole sometimes, but he runs a lot bigger than his 206-pound frame. Like he will lower his shoulder and he will finish runs. That dude runs hard. And again, only 206 pounds, but he's only 5'9". So he's stout. He has some power there. I got Jordan James next. And I know I might be helmet scouting here, but he reminds me of the, little running back that came out of Oregon last year. He didn't test well, small, but he sees it really well. His short area quickness is really, really good. So to me, I think he's going to be a good player. And then my other last two guys I'll throw out there outside my top 10, but I like them, is RJ Harvey, who I just think is really explosive as a guy you can bring in as a change of pace back. And then as a late round, third down back, Marcus Yarns. And I still have 3 or 4 running backs I still have to watch, to be honest with you. I didn't finish ATN. I didn't finish Damian Martinez. They can move up into the zone too once I finish them. But there are backs of all different shapes and sizes, Tony, to your point. Whatever you need, you can find. You need a bigger power back. You need a receiving back. You need a fast back. They're all here. There's a lot of different options, which I love.
Couple things. The kid from Kentucky that's on the Bills, Ray Davis, was the
Ray
name you were
Davis.
thinking of. As far as Tootin's concerned, you got to remember, people don't know this. He was playing on an ankle last season that was about 75%. So I
Wow.
think that hurt him and his ability to cut back. His ankle, even at the Senior Bowl, was only about 90%. The ankle finally got fully healthy leading up to the combine and at pro day when he blew it up. I agree with you about Sampson. The other guy, I do agree with you. Jordan James is my number 11 back. He is an explosive guy. He is a violent guy. Only 205 pounds, 5'9.5", but he plays like a bigger back, and he's got exceptional quickness. Doesn't back down to a challenge. Not a guy who finishes runs out of bounds. Will take it head on. Also a terrific pass catcher out of the backfield. I remain. I think Damian Martinez may go later than when I have him in the third round, but I'm partial to Martinez. Didn't carry the ball a lot last season at Miami because, like I said, they had that rotational system. Go back and watch the film in 2023, when he was at Oregon State, where after that season, he was graded as a solid second-day pick by scouts, justifiably so.
You will have starting running backs picked on day 3 of this draft, Tony. There will be at least one day 3 starting running back pick, maybe more than one. So
yeah, and guys are just going to contribute. Kyle Manegi didn't test well, but is a good ball carrier. Jarquez Hunter. I mean, there's a guy who basically, you give him the ball, he can score from any point on the field.
Jaden Smith is another guy, right? Yeah.
Jaden Blue of Texas, who I think is just probably would have been better served going back to school and developing his game, but he's got great upside and is outstanding ball carrier. Then later on, Kalel Mellings of Michigan, Ollie Gordon of Oklahoma State, who's coming off a bad season, but you watch the film and he plays smart, tough football.
No, I'm with you. It's really good. All right, let's jump over to the wide receiver class. But first, a reminder, draft season is brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risks into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at moodys.com. All right, Tony, wide receiver. We both referred to this as a down wide receiver class. Can I edit that for a second? I think it's a down wide receiver class at the top. I don't think, and I'm a bigger Ted McMillan fan than others. I would have him closer to Rome Odunze, I think, than other people did, to be totally honest with you. But you don't have a Marvin Harrison Jr., you don't have a Malik Neighbors in this draft, which to me, they were head and shoulders, not head and shoulders, but they were a small tier higher than Odunze last year. And then I just got a bunch of guys that I'd be fine picking in the second or third rounds that I think are going to be really good receivers. Like if you have a 1A receiver on your roster already and you're looking for a number 2, this is the draft for you. You can find those guys all day on day 2. So why don't you go through your list?
Well, I still have Travis Hunter as a receiver. Maybe he's a cornerback, but he's on my receiver list. Then I have Ted McMillan. I agree with you about McMillan, but we'll talk about him. Luther Burden of Missouri is number 3. Matthew Golden of Texas. I am not as high as others as Golden, but people absolutely love him. They raved about him at the Texas Pro Day. Emeka Egbuka of Ohio State ran faster than expected at the Ohio State Pro Day. He delivers when it's necessary, but has never really established himself as a number 1 receiver. Alec Ayomanor, now we're getting into the definite second rounders of Stanford, he's my number 6. Dante Thornton of Tennessee, who I absolutely love. I think the upside on Thornton is over the moon.
I have not
Jaden,
watched him yet. I'm looking forward to it.
oh, you report back to us when you watch him. Jaden Higgins of Iowa State, he's number 8, bigger possession guy who ran faster at the combine than expected. Kyle Williams of Washington, terrific route runner, polished, not big but very well rounded. Isaiah Bond of Texas, who I don't know. I mean, I have Isaiah Bond and Ty Felton of Maryland rated back to back. I think that may change as we get closer to the draft. I'm going to have to go back and watch watch both of those guys.
All right. I'm going to give you my top 10 here, Tony. And some names are different and guys are stacked differently. So I think this will be a good debate here. All right. I got Ted McMillan as my top guy. I'm just kind of keeping Travis Hunter off to the side. Like, yeah, he's up there too. I have the same type of grade on you as Matthew Golden, but I do have him as my next receiver. I have like a first, second round grade on him, along with Emeka Egbuka. Those are my next two guys. I have Luther Burden in the next group. He's had injuries 2 years in a row, Tony, and he's a guy that is very physical. I love him, after the catch, and I think he's actually a much better contested catch player than people give him credit for. He's really good at catching the ball in coverage. But again, that Missouri offense, it's just some of these college offenses, man. It drives me nuts. Like, come on, can you run a real route, please? And you don't see enough of that with Burden. I have Jalen Noel next out of Iowa State. I think his combination of juice, he reminds me a lot of Ladd McConkey, of speed and quickness together. And I have Jaden Higgins right next to him, his teammate. I have those guys literally touching, depending if you want the smaller, fast guy in Noel or the tall, bigger guy in Jaden Higgins. I was shocked when I saw how this came out for me. I actually have Jack Bech next, and he doesn't have the vertical speed to separate. But when I watched him on tape, Tony, I thought at the top of the route, coming in and out of his breaks, was phenomenal. I thought he was a really good route runner. He did not have a drop the last 2 years. His hands are exceptional. So I have him next as a really good possession receiver. Then in the next kind of group together, stacked in kind of really close to each other, I have Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, Jalen Royals out of Utah State. There are a lot of people really high on him. I didn't quite see that. These are kind of second, third round guys for me. And I have Iaminer out of Stanford, Isaiah Bonds in that mix for me. And then just a couple of guys I'll throw out there as kind of day 3 guys that I think could be fun. Savion Williams out of TCU.
Yeah.
Again, can you please run a real route for me? But he's great. He's almost like a Cordero Patterson type. I've heard somebody made that comp, and I like it. Good contested catch guy, though. They don't throw him enough down the field. Just 6'4", 220. He's a monster. I haven't quite figured out why Isaac Tesla wasn't more productive at Arkansas. Because, I watched him, and I do even putting the testing aside, I thought his tape was actually pretty good. And then I know he tested terribly. I'll still draft Tez Johnson on day 3, Tony. I don't care. Yeah. You watch him, he separates. People have trouble covering him.
Well, Tesla wasn't more productive because the ball was going to his teammate, Andrew Armstrong, who had a great pro day, who I believe is one of the most underrated, overlooked receivers in this draft. The one guy that I have earlier that you didn't mention is Keandre Lambert-Smith, the Auburn receiver by way of Penn State, tested incredibly well at the combine. When you watch him on film, he comes away with all the catches. The contested grab, he catches the ball downfield, just doesn't have the great production. My issue with Jalen Noel, I like his physical skills, but when I watched him on film, I saw a guy who could not win out for the contested throw, a lot like Isaiah Bond. He's always struggling in battles, which I think he needs space to work. I would agree with you about Jack Bech. He's right outside my top 10 only because I think the physical skills of the Jaden Higgins, the Dante Thorntons surpass him. And I like the completeness of the polish in the game of Kyle Williams of Washington State.
Yeah, I love Kyle Williams at the Senior Bowl, Tony, and I will admit I have not gotten to his game tape yet, so I think he might break into my top 10 once I'm done with it because he was phenomenal at the Senior Bowl. I thought he was really good. What separates Golden and Egbuka for you? Because I struggled stacking those guys. I literally had them right next to each other. Golden, the 4.29 at the combine does not show up on tape. I'll just say that first and foremost. He does not look like a 4.29 player, but I thought his route running was really good. He knows how to separate at the top of the route, and that's what impressed me about him. I think he's just a great route runner.
And that's what stood out to people who are at the Texas Pro Day, the decision makers I spoke with. If you saw my tweet about Texas Pro Day, I said Golden was, well, Golden, and that's what he is. I think the difference is I think Golden's got much higher upside. I like Ibuka, but Ibuka has disappointed me. And prior to the 2023 season, I had a first round grade on him, yet he didn't consistently play like a first rounder. He's taking a back seat to Marvin Harrison. He's taking a back seat to Jeremiah Smith. He did come up big for the team in the college football playoffs. But it's always, with Ibuka, as far as I'm concerned, it's always one of these things where you expect more from him. I mean, Golden delivered in big spots, and Golden was a big play receiver at Texas. And I think the best way for me to put it is Golden has a much higher upside, while Ibuka is probably the safer receiver. He doesn't have as much downside risk as Matthew Golden.
Yeah, and Ibuka does everything well, right? He blocks, he does the dirty work. And, he played mostly at the slot Ohio State, Tony. I think he's actually could be a pretty good outside receiver in the NFL. He's got the size and the speed to play outside, in my opinion. So I think that gives him some flexibility there, which is good. Luther Burden, how much of a project is he going to be in the NFL level, getting him kind of into an NFL offense? Or is he always just going to be kind of like a yak deep pass guy and not really a technician as a route runner?
I think he's going to do it. I think the problem with Luther Burden is coming into the season, he was overrated. Remember, he was graded as the number one prospect by scouts who grade underclassmen before the 2024 season. Not the number one receiver, the number one prospect. Higher than Will Campbell, higher than Shedeur Sanders, who was getting huge grades. And I don't think he ever deserved that sort of billing. And now it's come down a little bit. A lot of people think that he's not a great natural pass catcher. They like Ibuka better as a pass catcher. They like McMillan better as a pass catcher. I agree with you about the Missouri offense. He doesn't have an extended route tree. He's got to learn to run more routes. He's got to learn to run his routes better. But he's got decent size. He's not huge, but he's got good size. He's not super fast, but he's fast enough. He's a guy that's got a great amount of upside. Let me just say one thing about Tet McMillan. We talked about Shedeur Sanders before. Tet McMillan is a guy, and I can't get my thumb on it just yet. I'm sure I will by draft day. He's all over the place on boards. I have him as a top 10 pick. There were some people saying they wouldn't take him to the bottom half of round one. I'm hearing character issues, but no one has really explained what those character issues are. Evidently, he did an interview at a podcast where he said
I saw
he never watches tape, which is a real stupid thing. You remember Donnie Mitchell last year, at the press conferences at the Combine where he really tanked his draft stock. I think if that's the only thing with Tet McMillan, it's not an issue. But if that's just one of many things with Tet McMillan, and I have not found that out yet, once these pro days are over, I'll start to dive a little bit deeper. That could be an issue. I know that Tet McMillan's people have said to him, that, there's a possibility he drops out of the top 10. So Tet McMillan, I guess, is like the Shedeur Sanders at the receiver position, that he's all over the place on draft boards.
All right, the last receiver I want to touch on, Tony, then we only got about 10 minutes left. We still got to do tight end and offensive line. The Stanford receiver, I have him lower for me than you do. I feel like he's just very raw still. I like the physical traits, but, okay route runner, just doesn't do a whole lot. He's kind of good at everything, but not great at anything. Why are you such a big fan of Iameter?
Upside. I mean, he is a contested catch, a game controlling receiver who ran much faster at the combine than he does on film. I would have never thought he was going to run a 4.44 at the combine. No way. So now it's just a matter of coaching him to play to that speed on the football field. And if you can mesh that with his ability to catch the ball, because he catches the ball very well fundamentally, he goes up and he snatches the ball away from his frame, you've got something there a year or two down the road. Same thing with Dante Thornton. Although Dante Thornton, you can make, when you watch him, let me know what you think. Dante Thornton catches the ball better, and he's more of a downfield threat, and he's slightly bigger to tell you the truth.
No, I'm with you. All right, let's go to tight ends here, Tony. You have wrong sheet here. You have Colson Loveland still at number one for you, just ahead of Tyler Warren. I have those two guys swapped on my board. We both have Arroyo at number 3. You have Mason Taylor at 4. I have Mason Taylor at 5. I have Harold Fannin up a little bit higher than you do. Then we both have Terrence Ferguson next on our list. And then you have Oronde Gadsden, Joshua Simon. Then you have Fannin come in there at number 8. Thomas Fidone out of Nebraska, and then Gunnar Helm out of Texas.
I'm going to say this right now. I think the best tight ends from this class are going to come from day 2 of the draft. I think the Arroyas, maybe the Mason Taylors, the Oronde Gadsens, the Josh Simons, 2 or 3 years down the road will be the best tight ends from this class. I think when you compare Loveland to Tyler Warren, Loveland is much more the downfield threat. He's much more the natural receiver. He's good. He's more Brock Bowers, if you will, than Tyler Warren is. Although he's not Brock Bowers, but he's more that type of player. Tyler Warren is a great college football player. He was a lot of fun to watch. Lined him up all over the place. Did everything Penn State asked him to do. Doesn't mean he's a great NFL prospect. I think he's a very good tight end. I just don't think he's a great prospect that I would take early in the draft. And people are talking about him as being a top 10 pick. I spoke with a league insider yesterday who was at the game against USC, where Tyler Warren caught 14 passes, and everyone went over the moon to him. And I made the observation. I was like, yeah, but if you really watch that tape, I think Drew Allar was targeting Tyler Warren to his detriment. There were other receivers open all over the field, which would have led to bigger plays, and he agreed with me. Tyler Warren's a nice prospect. I think the thing with Tyler Warren in this draft is when you look at all of those tight ends, Tyler Warren is the guy who's going to be starting week 1 as a blocker, as a pass catcher. He's going to give you the earlier returns, whereas the Arroyas, the Oronde Gadsens, the Josh Simons, even Colston Loveland with the shoulder injury, there are more questions as to what they're going to be able to produce in 2025, which is why Tyler Warren is likely to be the first tight end drafted. Like Ted McMillan, like Shedeur Sanders, he's all over the place when you talk to people. Some people say, top 10 pick. Others say late first round. I spoke with someone who said he's the number 4 tight end on our board. And I understand it because that offense, they want their tight ends to get down the field consistently for a vertical passing game at the position. And Tyler Warren is not that type of prospect.
Interesting. How far do you think Loveland might drop because of that shoulder injury?
I don't think he's going to get past any of the loss unless something really pops up. And I was told it was an AC issue, but I'm also told he'll be ready for camp. Unless their doctors look at it negatively, I don't think he gets past either Los Angeles teams, whether that be the Rams or the Chargers.
I love Arroyo, Tony. I'm with you. I think he is as good of his receiving skills as anyone else in this draft class. Terrence Ferguson, I think, is really good as well. And I think Mason Taylor is just really solid all around. Like, that guy is going to be I don't know if he's ever going to be a star, but he is going to be a good tight end in the league for a very long time. And he's very young.
And I don't know why Oronde Gadsden doesn't get more love. We saw him at the Shrine Bowl practices. He wasn't, he was 45 pounds at Shrine Bowl practice. He wasn't moving around like a slow guy who just put on 20 pounds. He was moving around at the tight end position like a receiver, catching the ball incredibly well. So I think as he just becomes more accustomed to playing that position and hopefully improves his blocking, I think Gadsden is one of the most overlooked players at this spot moving towards the draft.
All right, let's do offensive line, Tony. Real quick, give me your rankings. Got about 6 minutes.
Will Campbell, number 1, slightly ahead of Armand Membo. I mean slightly, but I think Membo could be the first tackle taken. Kelvin Banks of Texas is 3. Josh Simmons of Ohio State is number 4 because I think he's more of a natural left tackle or the most natural left tackle after Will Campbell. Tyler Booker of Alabama, then Josh Connerly of Oregon, Gray Zabel of North Dakota State, Donovan Jackson of Ohio State, Jonas Savanea of Arizona, Marcus Bowe of Purdue. I still like him. A lot of people are down on him. Ezra of Minnesota, number 9, and Cameron Williams of Texas, number 10.
Yeah, I think that's a good group. I have mine kind of separated by tackle and guard, so I'll try to do it off the top of my head here. I got Campbell and Membo as the top 2 guys, very close to each other. I could go either way. I have Josh Simmons as my next guy, Tony. I watched him. My gosh. Just utterly dominant. His one-hand punch, just keeping guys off of him. It's like an 18-year-old playing with his 7-year-old brother, and you're just holding him by the chest, and he's waving his arms, and he can't get to him, and that's what it looks like watching Josh Simmons sometimes. Then I got Kelvin Banks next. Josh Connerly's coming in after that. I really liked the Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson, Tyler Booker as kind of that top of the second round group. I don't think Donovan Jackson can play tackle in the pros, even though he did a good job at Ohio State. I don't think he's got the foot speed for it. Same for Gray Zabel. I think both of them are guards. Tyler Booker, again, didn't test well, but really, really solid player. He's in that group for me. And then I'm with you. I got the Savaneas, the Ursary, I have as a straight up second rounder. I think he's going to be a solid starting tackle. Then I get into the Wyatt Millums, the Marcus Bowes, those type of guys after that. So I think we're really in line here. If I had to ask you right now, who's getting picked first, Will Campbell or Armand Membo?
I'm going to go with Membo. I think you look at the Patriots at 4, you look at the Jaguars at 5, you look at the Raiders at 6, you look at the Jets at 7, or any of those teams can take them. I mean, the Patriots could also take Will Campbell because they need more of a left tackle. But I just think Membo is more of that Mike Vrabel type of offensive lineman, punch you in the face, step on you when you're down. The one thing about Simmons, you mentioned his arm punch and everything else. He's an athletic guy. I mean, blocks with tremendous fundamentals, excellent knee bend, wide base, keeps his feet moving. It's a shame that he got injured when he did, or we would be talking about Josh Simmons as one of the top 3 tackles, or at least a top 12 pick in this year's draft.
Tony, if he stayed healthy and he played as well as he did the first 6 games, we might be talking about him as a top 5 pick. Like, he might be the next guy picked after Hunter and Carter. Like, he could very well easily be that next guy given his physical tools. When all is said and done, Tony, I find in a draft like this where you're going to run out of first-round picks by pick early 20s in this draft in terms of grades, that teams are going to probably pick guys that are safe. And I think especially interior offensive linemen are probably the safer guys you could pick, in my opinion, at least. So I would not be shocked to see Booker, Zabel, Jackson, Connerly, though I see him as a tackle, all end up. And I think we might end up getting more first-round offensive linemen than we originally thought, just because of the nature of the draft class. And teams would be like, look, I can shore up my offensive line at the end of the first round. Hell yeah, I'm going to do that instead of picking some second-round wide receiver.
I would be shocked if Booker really makes it out of the top 22 picks. I mean, yeah, he did not test well, but he did not time well, okay? And the marks weren't great. But if you watch the position drills, it was night and day, because in the position drills at the combine is what you see on film. You see a guy who can actually move his feet. He's not a stiff, small area blocker, some ability to block on the second level. And he's got that nastiness to him. He's got that power to him. So I think he's a power gap blocker that if you want to use him on the second level or use him in motion on occasion, he'll do a good job for you.
I tell you what, I love Connerly, man. He moves so well. His footwork is great. I think maybe he's a little light in the butt. Like, he can maybe get a little bit stronger. And that's not because of that one Senior Bowl rep either. There's nothing to do with that. You just saw him. Was it Abdul Carter that I think on one play literally long arm him and like put him right on his back on one play? I think and maybe I think it was Carter. Carter did that to one of the guys I watched the last couple of days. I think it was him. But I think Connerly can get a little bit stronger, but he definitely has the feet to play offensive tackle. He's going to be fine out there.
And he's another zone blocker. He's another guy that's really exceptional in motion. And in my opinion, it's easier to take a zone blocker and make him stronger than it is to take a strong, powerful, small area lineman from college and teach him to be a zone blocker.
And that's why I have Ursary as a second rounder and Connerly as a first/second. Because Ursary is your much bigger, not moving all that well, right? Kind of grinded out power type of offensive tackle to me.
He's got tremendous upside. He just needs a lot more work and he needs a lot more consistency. Really, as far as I'm concerned, has got to play to his level of potential each snap.
All right, Tony, I got to go record Big Blue Kickoff. This was fun, my friend. Next week, folks, stay with us. We'll be here on Tuesday again or Wednesday, and we will have the top 10s on defense as I try to cram all these guys in on my tape watching over the next 7 days to catch up to Tony, who I keep running faster, and Tony just keeps staying ahead of me with his Olympic background. I got no shot. I need to buy like a car or something like that. I don't know. Tony, good stuff, man. Enjoy your week. Anything on Sportskeeda coming up that people should keep their eye on?
Just the last couple of pro days, and we got the mock draft simulator updated. That's always a lot of fun. And then from here, it's all news and rumors through draft weekend. Probably a couple more mock drafts as well.
For Tony Pauline, I'm John Schmeelk. That's draft season brought to you by Moody's. We'll see you next week, everybody.